people that go in and they optimize stuff. There's people who focus on tech stuff. There's people who focus on offsite. And when you do one of those more, you're incentivized to tell everybody that that's the lever they need. And what I've learned to do over time is talk to companies and say, look, like, I don't even think we're the best fit for you. You just need someone who can help you do like straight content marketing really well, and maybe the SEO opportunities.
Welcome to the Jolly and Sorcery Knowledge Series, made for smart business leaders who want to stay ahead of the competition using proven strategies. Each session, Jolly and Sorcery chat with an authority in a specific digital niche. From SEO to PR and beyond, these leaders reveal the tactics and mindsets that changed their game and could change yours. Without further ado, here's your host, Greg Heilers.
So yeah, Nigel, man, I, as you know, I'm a fan of yours, so that's why I wanted to reach out to you. And the background makes sense to me now. Like you've just always impressed me with your content skill, I would say.
I'm blushing, Greg. I'm blushing. But yeah, thanks for having me.
No, my pleasure. So yeah, Nigel, we interacted because you were heading up the content strategy at Atrium, and you've done that before then, since then. I mean, your agency, OGM, you've got some of the biggest names in their niches that you are supporting their growth. And I just wanted to connect today to learn from you, and hopefully our audience can learn from you. So I appreciate it.
Hopefully I have something useful to say.
Yeah, I'm certain you do. So I guess since, we did launch in, Nigel, like maybe if I could let you introduce yourself, where you're at today. And, like you said, we don't always know what's next, and that's okay. But I'm just curious to hear from you.
Cool. Yeah. So I run OGM, stands for Organic Growth Marketing, and we work with a lot of SaaS companies, mostly B2B, but also some non-B2B. And it's funny you mentioned Atrium, because that's like that's not like the normal model even that I work. That was more like usually what we do. And you sort of have to find product market fit with whatever you're doing, and you try some things, try other things. I'm sure you've had the same experience, but what I found is that our sweet spot is working with companies that either already got content started and they have a foundation, but they haven't quite figured out how do we scale the inbound organic like traffic and lead generation from this, or companies that have like started a little bit and like they're really looking to scale up, and they like they've raised some money, they have product market fit, and they're just looking to do something cool. And with Atrium, they wanted someone to like run the content, and it was just such a cool opportunity because they had all these really well-known investors. Like I interviewed Ashton Kutcher,
Right.
and it was sort of like a just do this and see what happens. And I mean, if I had an opportunity to do that again in a situation like that, I think I would. But it's now we've mostly like our product market fit is settling into, okay, work with a company that knows how to produce good content. We'll help them do more of that, but then also scale the inbound. So that's like the summary there.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, and I think later, if we had time, we might dive into, your guys' approach as an agency. But the reason I wanted to reach out to you is I'm not sure how familiar you are with my history. We tried Jolly for 2 years as a content agency, but we lacked the strategy, right? So, I mean, that's the end game of, in my opinion, content is the inbound. And yet we couldn't execute that. We couldn't even attempt to orchestrate it, right? There's the promotion angle. There's co-marketing. There's all kinds of things that are part of that, and we lacked it, quite frankly. So I guess I wanted to start off with kind of, what is it that your clients think of when they think of engaging you? Are they coming at you like, look guys, we need to hit this target of traffic, this target of revenue, profitability? It depends on the client, in my experience. I'm curious what happens with you all.
Yes, I mean, like I talk to people at a variety of different sizes of companies and stages of growth, and I've learned to sort of suss out again, like what is our product market fit? Where are we going to have the biggest impact? And what I found is like it's in our interest to be very selective about who we work with, because ultimately, like I'm lazy. Like I don't really do marketing. I don't do anything. Like my website isn't descriptive. It's just we've done work that has worked for people, and then we get leads as a result of that. And it's like a product is your marketing sort of thing. And we don't work with that many companies. So if I take on something and it doesn't work out well, then it's almost like I failed at marketing in the future sort of thing. So what I found is it's really important to work with companies where there's like a big potential. So like, is there actually a big potential with inbound here, especially when it comes to SEO? Because some spaces, they just don't have it as much. Or when you model out the unit economics, like if we look at how much traffic is in the space and what your LTV is this a big opportunity? And a big opportunity like varies, but we've worked with companies like Intercom, Miro, Profitwell, where there's like a bigger opportunity. And then there's companies where there's something to be done there, but for our sake and our model, like it just wouldn't be as much as a slam dunk. So usually we come in where it's like there's a gigantic business opportunity and there's a whole bunch of byproducts of doing SEO and content well, but the main thing is, will this pay for itself within a couple of years and then like really improve our CAC to LTV in the long run?
Interesting. Okay, so it's about, you're already considering for the client their CAC to LTV. That makes sense. That's a whole nother layer. There was some projects I was able to work with you under, and they were so sophisticated, and you could tell, obviously this was not a short-term play at all. So I really liked that. What about when you get a new client? It sounds like, I think I know the answer to this question. Is it a fully custom solution each time? I mean, is there? What I love about your website, and you've tried to coach me on this for years, right? Is like minimalist. Like you don't.
I don't know if you want to be taking advice from me, but
dude, I wanted to have a jolly background, so I would definitely follow your lead there. But I think what I'm hitting at. It's just, do you have a one-size-fits-all kind of, look, this is our service, this is our product? It's obviously not that extreme, or is it all the way at the other end, fully custom? How does that work for you all?
Yeah. So I think, like most things, it's somewhere in the middle, because if we had something that was fully custom, it would mean that we didn't have any processes or procedures or regular things that we did. And it would be like, and then it would assume that like each website is so unique that like nothing we've ever done could apply, which I don't think is the case. But then the other extreme is almost just as absurd. And that's actually where I think a lot of service providers, like actually one way we try to distinguish ourselves, where if there's different aspects of SEO, right? There's like people that go in and they optimize stuff. There's people who focus on tech stuff. There's people who focus on offsite. And when you do one of those more, you're incentivized to tell everybody that that's the lever they need. And what I've learned to do over time is talk to companies and say, look, like, I don't even think we're the best fit for you. You just need someone who can help you, I don't know, like sort of like do like straight content marketing really well. And maybe the SEO opportunity isn't as big there. And that's like not your money spent on us isn't going to be the best thing there. But so I forgot, what was the question at the beginning?
Well, you were getting into how you disqualify yourself, which I love.
Yeah.
I do that all the time on sales calls, right? I'm like, these are the red flags. Like, these are the red flags. You should consider these. Or try to suggest alternatives. But I was curious, if you just can't shake them, if someone really wants to work with you guys, you manage to make that sale, let's say, the inbound, as you said, that's what you do. What's your approach for onboarding at that point? It sounds like almost like your team is multi-skilled. It sounds like you're not honing in on a certain niche of theirs. You're looking more holistically.
Yeah, so the main thing we're looking for is, if you go back to, there's sort of different types of offsite, there's different types of onsite, and I think one of the mistakes that a lot of people make with SEO or content or whatever is they go immediately into the weeds and the bottoms down approach, which is, okay, like, here's what other competitors are doing, we're going to copy that, here's the keywords you're already ranking for in Search Console, whatever, instead of looking at like, what does this business do? What makes sense? What have you learned from paid channels? What have you learned from referral channels? And our process, it's sort of over time, it's more from prescriptive, because I think when you start, you like to think, I know what I'm doing, I can help you, like what we do is really good. And then what I've learned over time is that to do our jobs really well, we have to spend the first part listening and getting information. So then saying, okay, like, so even for example, if we're advising them on what to do with offsite, there's companies that do really well, they have a really strong domain, they already rank for some stuff without trying. So we think that that's less of a lever. It's more sort of a, okay, like that can help you. It's like insurance. And then there's other companies where we say, look, like if it's a CRM, like I talked to a company that was doing CRM stuff. It was like, if you want to compete with HubSpot, you realize there's been like hundreds of millions of dollars spent in this niche. You basically need to commit to brand building for the next 3 years to even have a remote possibility. So it's about looking at upfront, what are the levers, and then doubling down on what we think will work. So in that way, it's custom, but the way that we come to those solutions is operationalized.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. You scratched off a question I had for you. I'm curious then, like how much of the client's existing team factors into your plans for them? Are you saying like, look, they've got a good social team, for instance, as long as we can get their buy-in, know they're going to help promote the content we help create. Or for example, they've already got a really solid content team. Maybe like you said, maybe we're not even a good fit, or maybe like we can help them with the technical side as long as they're going to execute what we suggest. I mean, what kind of interaction do you all have? Or is it like we operate over here, client operates over here, and hopefully we get they because it's difficult with client expectations sometimes, and you really need buy-in from the internal stakeholders, I feel.
Yeah, and that's why one thing I've learned is that I think so much of this stuff comes down to the expectations that are set up front and where you come in. So for example, if you come in at sort of like a manager level where they say, hey, we need this one thing done, then you're going to be able to do that one thing, and anything outside of that one thing is going to be difficult. But when you come in at like either like a CMO, or if it's a bigger company like senior director, but preferably as high as possible, then you're coming in with the expectation of, hey, we want to grow the hell out of this, and we're sort of signing up for this sort of holistic view of the world. It doesn't mean you still have to convince people, and companies have really smart people on their teams, and if you just say something stupid, they're going to call you out on it. But sort of coming in at first and recognizing what people are doing well. And then another big thing is just getting quick wins. One thing we focus on is like, what are the things that are close to popping that within like the first 2, 3, 4 weeks, we can get a visible win. So people say, oh, well, that's really cool. Like maybe these people actually know what they're doing. And then when you set the expectation up front about, here's how we imagine working with you, and you basically tell them, honestly, look, like we want to support you and help you make your goals and look smart, instead of like, oh, we're the SEO people, do what we say. Like that's never going to work. And again, I think for this stuff to be effective and holistic, you have to understand what different people across an org are doing.
Yes. What then does the interaction look like? I know it probably varies, right? If you're dealing with CMO versus marketing manager, I mean, how many team members of yours and theirs would be interfacing, and like what's the cadence or the frequency? I mean, it sounds like to me at where you're operating, it's not so much like, look, we've got some briefs we're going to deliver, obviously, right? It's more you're finding those easy quick wins, but you're thinking way long term for the client as well. It almost sounds like on at least multiple times per week, you guys are interacting and working things out together iteratively.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think while we definitely often come in with CMOs, I think it's a red flag if we have to be interacting with the CMO constantly. They don't want that. And if they do, then it means that this is a problem and it probably isn't going to go anywhere. So what we usually, and I'll even like, there's been projects where I think there's potential, but I've said it's not a good fit because they don't have the people in place. So one thing I think everyone needs that we work with is sort of an editor and content manager, and then someone who can be a project manager internally. Because I think when you work with external people, it doesn't work if you don't have someone internally to drive it forward, who has lunch with people or Zoom coffees or whatever in 2021. So basically, do you have people internally to drive stuff forward? And then what we usually do is have one key stakeholder who's sort of they're the connective tissue. And if we need to talk to engineering or design, then they'll refer us to them. But overall, we have like our one person who's more of a source of truth. But then we get intros and work with people on a one-off basis as needed. But try to streamline it so it's not just like if you're talking to a whole bunch of people, then it means nobody really owns the success, and then there's a problem.
Yeah, you're looking for just a giant quagmire where you're handcuffed, basically. You can't deliver, and they're increasingly frustrated, right? I mean, that sounds awful.
Yeah, totally.
We kind of blew through that, and I think it's partially because of my ignorance. I'm curious, on the level of delivering the level of service you do, was there anything I missed that I could have asked? Because every time we get to speak, I learn something from you. So I don't know what you can do with a question like that, but I'm just curious if there's something you thought, I wonder why he wouldn't even touch on that.
Greg, you're too kind. You're too kind. But I think one thing that we try to do is, and it's something that I talk about with potential clients when I'm talking to them, is what often happens with external vendors is you either have people who are too sort of in the weeds or too high level. And I think the high level is just, okay, what people often ask for is an audit. They say, okay, we want to do SEO. When you do SEO, you need an audit. Give us an audit. Now, we don't do that in a vacuum because I've found very few instances of SEO audits like actually doing anything. Because what happens is if you're an agency and you're doing an audit, your job is to look smart. So then you just put together this big ass document with like just all
11
these pages and table of, oh my God, I've seen like ridiculously big ones. And then no one knows what to do with it. Like, okay, we have this big document.
Yeah,
most of it isn't going to do anything. They're incentivized to say, oh, like write 1 million meta descriptions and change these alt tags. Like, yes, should you do that? Maybe, sure, maybe even not, but it's not really going to move the needle. So it's a combination of getting the buy-in for the bigger vision, but then actually pushing stuff over the finish line. So one thing we do, like you asked how we work, like we'll sort of work with people to iterate on projects and get with them in the weeds to help get it over the finish line. Because what we're doing up front is saying, hey, like we're going to co-own the success of this program. And the success of this program isn't predicated on handing over stuff and then hoping you do it. Like we'll work with you to do it, which is why you need to have resources, but then we actually work with people. So like we usually work with someone on the content team, and our objective, our incentives are aligned because we don't do hourly pricing or anything, is to put them in a position where they can sort of get better and better and better and learn how we're doing things so that we need to spend less time with them. And then if we do a new project, we spend more time, help get it over the finish line, and then we have a process for it. So I think to answer your open-ended question, it's like a combination of sort of getting high-level strategy and vision set and then actually working through the details to get stuff done. So you don't just say, oh, look, we gave you this document and you didn't do anything. So tough luck.
Exactly. Yeah. It's interesting because a lot of people look at the DWY as having a negative connotation, right? Like, oh, they're going to slip in some more margin and offload some of the work. You're empowering them, actually. And I say that not having a DWY offering, and I'm sure you wouldn't even call it that, right? But I don't
even know what that means. You're acronyming me right
now. Just done with you. It just seems like you are setting their team up for success, as you said, and there to support them when they need that push. We could dive into your own agency's strategy for yourselves. I also think we could save it for another time if you're interested. We could just, I don't know
if there's much strategy to go over, Greg. So that might be an open and shut case. But yeah, I mean, whatever you want to talk about.
Okay, well then, since I have you here, for all the agency owners, let's say, if we could throw them in a bucket, what is your logic behind, the one, and you've shown me several other examples, like the one-page website, right? Like not the traditional, like we do. You need a service page that tries to spell it out with some sales copy and a CTA and a book here and what's your thinking? If you all navigated to Nigel's site today, I think it's ogmarketing.com. Is that right?
Marketing OG.
Marketing OG. Oh my goodness. Got to get the plug right.
You don't have to know it.
You don't have to know it, you say. So for you, is it just you're not worried about it? Like you're not worried about the inbound to your website, or what? How does that play out for you?
Yeah. So it's really like the current website and everything. What it does is it matches the current business model, which is again like I'm not looking to land like 3 clients a week or even a month or not even necessarily a quarter. So it's a means to an end. And that's to just show people that we're legit, that we've worked with good companies, that people have good things to say about us. And it's not a form of discovery. And the few people that have discovered it that way, it hasn't gone anywhere. And it's all dependent on business model. If you have a higher volume, lower friction business model, then I think my approach would be completely idiotic and your business wouldn't work. But because it's run so much on referrals and like very trusted referrals, it's more about the website being a means to an end of, again, like showing that like we're credible and here's the companies we've worked with. And if you think that you want to be among them, then talk to us. But again, like that doesn't even mean that it's necessarily the best option. For all I know, it's bleeding leads or opportunity, but it just works so far. Like all you know is you do something, the overall thing works, and you just hope that like the different parts are supporting it, and you can tell yourself a story either way.
Completely agree. You would solve a lot of our issues on the brand side in terms of dwelling over these minutia. The point is, maybe you shouldn't even be thinking about those things. Is what I'm getting. So.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not. I don't know. Again, I don't know how good advice that is for different people, but I think the question to ask yourself is, like, how do people find you and what's important for them? So if you have a model where it's more sort of high volume, low touch, and it's people finding you, then you probably want your website to like answer questions. Like the whole CRO is a big high impact field for a reason, but there's also things where your website it doesn't matter as much for someone who requires a personal connection, and it's going to be like they need to be talked through how it works and the understanding, and it's not going to be like a small sort of dollar amount or whatever. So I think it all just depends on the business model. Again, like maybe I'll have reason to change my mind in 6 months and do something different.
Okay, well, that is the best segue possible for my last question for you. If you were to move into an adjacent field, let's call it, OGM is doing great. There's no need, I'm not saying to scrap, but in a hypothetical situation where you were opening up shop in an adjacent field, what would it be for you?
Good question. So I guess, I mean, it's something I think about every once in a while. I'll give two answers. One is it's less adjacent, but we're building some internal tools. And what's exciting about that is the initial thought is just, okay, build cool stuff and just have an excuse to do it because it's fun and in a nerdy way. And who knows what'll come of it. Like maybe that'll help us change our business model because we'll automate some of the things that are tough. Maybe that'll become self-serve. Like who knows what'll happen with that. And so I think any sort of parallel business that sort of is more like involves software, that's answer number one. And I think answer number two would be something along the lines of reviews, which is just every once in a while I think about problems in the world that annoy me that I don't know if I don't have solutions, but there's just problems. And like I was just looking for, excuse me, an accountant, like a tax person. And it's just such an awful, awful experience. I'm like, why? There's no reason this has to be so bad. And even when it comes to products, I work in SEO, so I know when I look up something like, oh, look, these are all the affiliate websites. This is the review of the product. In our product, this review, whatever. And so something to make that a more human, less horrific experience. I don't have an answer. If I did, I would stop doing this and I would focus on that and, raise $100 million or something. But
I'm right there with you.
That's something that annoys me.
It's just a horrible feeling to work in the industry and know I'm looking for a basketball hoop for my son, right? And it's like, which of the 1 stars are authentic? Which of the 5 stars are real? Who knows anymore? You can fake anything. You can buy it, destroy the product, list the 1 star. You can do whatever you want, right? If you solve it, I'll be using your platform for sure. Begging to join your team, basically. Cool. Nigel, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you coming on this. It's a fledgling Jolly podcast. We don't have the neon sign, but I really appreciate it, man. And
I don't think neon signs are a prerequisite to have a dope show. But yeah, thanks for having me on. This has been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's catch up again soon.